Thank you for having me on your channel today. My name is Prince Abdullah Al Rashid. I'm 42 years old, and on September 22nd, 2018, I died for exactly 72 hours after being shot 3 times during an assassination attempt in Riyadh. What happened during those 3 days changed everything I believed about God, life, and eternity.
That's incredible, Prince Abdullah. Can you walk us through what happened that day and how you actually died?
It started as an ordinary business meeting, but it became the day I discovered that everything I thought I knew about God was incomplete. I was born into the Al Rashid royal family, third in line of succession to one of Saudi Arabia's most powerful dynasties. My childhood was spent in golden palaces with marble floors so polished you could see your reflection, surrounded by servants who anticipated my every need before I even spoke it. By the time I turned 30, I controlled billions in oil investments and international business dealings that stretched from London to Singapore. Yet, despite all this wealth and power, I lived with a spiritual emptiness that no amount of money could fill. My Islamic upbringing was strict and devout. I performed the 5 daily prayers without fail, memorized large portions of the Quran, and completed the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca 3 times. I fasted during Ramadan with genuine devotion and gave zakat to the poor as required by our faith. But if I'm being completely honest with you, these rituals had become mechanical. I went through the motions of worship while my heart remained distant from Allah. I lived in golden palaces, but my soul was spiritually impoverished. September 22nd, 2018 started like any other day in my privileged life. I had scheduled a high stakes business meeting in Riyadh's financial district to discuss a massive Syrian oil pipeline deal worth over $2 billion. The meeting was set for 2 p.m. at the Faisalia Tower, and I remember feeling confident about the negotiations. My security team had expressed some concerns about political tensions with a rival Saudi faction, but I dismissed their warnings as excessive caution. I should have listened to them. The conference room was on the 40th floor, overlooking the sprawling cityscape of Riyadh. Present were 5 other businessmen, 2 government officials, and my personal assistant. We had been discussing pipeline routes and profit margins for about an hour when everything changed in an instant. 3 masked gunmen burst through the conference room doors, their AK-47s already raised and ready to fire. The first bullet hit my left shoulder, spinning me around with such force that I crashed into the mahogany conference table. The impact was like being struck by a sledgehammer, and I immediately felt warm blood soaking through my white thobe. The second bullet pierced my right lung, and I tasted the metallic flavor of blood filling my mouth. But it was the third bullet that sealed my fate. It entered my chest directly above my heart, and I knew instantly that this wound would be fatal. As I collapsed to the floor, my vision began to tunnel, and sounds became distant echoes. The screaming and chaos around me seemed to fade into the background as my body went into shock. My breathing became increasingly shallow and labored. In those final moments, I found myself reciting the Shahada, our Islamic declaration of faith. La ilaha illa Allah Muhammadun Rasul. Allah, I whispered with my last breath, believing these would be the final words I would ever speak. Have you ever wondered what your last thought would be when facing death? Mine wasn't about my vast wealth, my political power, or even my family's safety. In that moment of ultimate vulnerability, my only concern was whether I had truly known God during my lifetime on earth. I felt my soul separating from my flesh like silk being pulled from thorns, and everything went completely black. The moment my heart stopped beating, I found myself floating 6 feet above my own body in that blood-stained conference room. I could see everything with perfect clarity, even things that were behind me or around corners. My perspective had somehow expanded beyond the normal limitations of human vision. Below me lay my lifeless form, dressed in the now crimson soaked white thobe, my eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. The three gunmen had already fled, leaving behind a scene of absolute chaos. I watched the paramedics burst through the conference room doors exactly 4 minutes after the shooting. They immediately began performing CPR on my body, pumping my chest and forcing air into my lungs through a manual respirator. I could see the lead paramedic's face clearly as he worked frantically to revive me. His name tag read Ahmed, and sweat was dripping from his forehead despite the air conditioning. I wanted to tell him that his efforts were futile, that I was already gone, but my voice made no sound in this strange new state of existence. The journey to King Faisal Specialist Hospital took 18 minutes, and I followed my body every step of the way. I floated above the ambulance as it raced through Riyadh's traffic, sirens wailing and lights flashing. Other drivers pulled aside to let us pass, completely unaware that they were witnessing a prince's final journey. Inside the ambulance, the paramedic continued their resuscitation attempts, injecting my body with epinephrine and shocking my heart with defibrillator paddles. Each electric shock made my physical form convulse violently, but I felt nothing except a growing sense of detachment. At the hospital, I observed the medical team's desperate efforts to save my life. Dr. Khalid Mansouri, the head of emergency medicine, led a team of 12 specialists in a 2 hour attempt to restart my heart. They opened my chest cavity and massaged my heart directly with their hands. They pumped unit after unit of blood into my veins and tried every medical intervention available. But at exactly 3:47 p.m., Dr. Mansouri looked at the flat line on the heart monitor and pronounced the time of death. I remember feeling strangely peaceful as I watched him pull the white sheet over my face. My family began arriving at the hospital within the hour. My mother, Princess Nayeli, collapsed in the hallway when she received the news. Her wailing echoed through the corridors, a sound of grief so profound that even the hardened medical staff stopped their work to observe a moment of respectful silence. My father, Prince Hassan, maintained his stoic composure publicly, but I could see tears streaming down his withered face when he thought no one was looking. My wife, Amira, brought our three children, and watching my youngest daughter ask why Papa wouldn't wake up broke my heart in ways I never knew were possible. I wanted desperately to comfort them, to tell them that I was still there, still watching over them. I tried to touch my mother's shoulder, to wipe away her tears, but my hand passed through her like morning mist. I attempted to speak their names, to call out that death wasn't the end, but no sound emerged from my spirit form. As the hours passed, I began sensing the presence of other beings around me. Though I couldn't see them clearly yet, there was a warmth, a pulling sensation drawing me upward and away from the hospital. I resisted at first because I wasn't ready to leave my family in their grief, but the invisible force grew stronger, more insistent, and eventually I found myself being drawn toward what appeared to be a tunnel of golden light, brighter than 1,000 desert suns. This wasn't the Islamic afterlife I had expected. Where was the bridge of Sirat that every soul must cross? Where were the angels Munkar and Nakir who were supposed to question me about my faith and deeds? Where was the paradise with flowing rivers and beautiful houris that the Quran had promised? Instead, I found myself in this mysterious tunnel, feeling more confused and frightened than I had ever been in my earthly life. Ask yourself this question if you truly believe in an afterlife. What if everything your religion taught you about death was only part of a much larger, more beautiful story? As I moved deeper into the tunnel of light, a figure began approaching me from the far end. At first, it appeared as pure radiance, so bright that I should have been blinded, yet somehow I could look directly at it without any discomfort. The light gradually took on human form, and I could see it was a man walking toward me with arms outstretched in welcome. As he drew closer, I noticed something that shocked me to my core. This man had distinctly Middle Eastern features, olive skin like my own, dark hair, and eyes filled with infinite compassion. Then I saw the scars. His hands bore the unmistakable marks of crucifixion wounds, and his feet showed similar scars. In that moment, I knew exactly who this was, and my entire world view shattered like glass hitting concrete. This was Jesus Christ. The man I had been taught was merely a prophet standing before me as the living God. Every fiber of my Islamic upbringing screamed in protest, yet my spirit recognized him immediately as the source of all the love and peace I had been searching for my entire life. But I'm Muslim, I cried out in desperation and confusion. You're not supposed to be here. I followed Allah. I kept the five pillars. I made the pilgrimage to Mecca 3 times. My voice echoed in the tunnel, filled with panic and theological crisis. Everything I had believed about God, about Jesus, about Islam and Christianity was being challenged in this impossible moment. Jesus approached me with such gentleness that my fear began to melt away despite my doctrinal confusion. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of eternity, yet felt as familiar as my own heartbeat. My beloved son Abdullah, he said, I have been waiting for you for so long. You have been seeking me your entire life, even when you didn't realize it was me you were searching for. I fell to my knees before him, overwhelmed by his presence. But Lord, if you are real, if you are truly God, why didn't you reveal yourself to me sooner? Why did you allow me to live in darkness for 42 years? I prayed 5 times a day. I fasted, I gave to charity, I sought God with all my heart according to what I was taught. Jesus reached down and lifted my chin so that I was looking directly into his eyes. In those eyes, I saw the entire universe, but every star and galaxy, yet also the most intimate knowledge of every moment of my life. Abdullah, he said softly, I am the same God you prayed to 5 times a day. I am the Allah whose name you called upon. But you knew me incompletely, like seeing only a shadow of the full reality. I never abandoned you, even when your understanding of me was limited by human traditions and interpretations. He continued speaking, and each word penetrated my heart like gentle rain on parched desert soil. I didn't come to destroy Islam or to condemn your sincere seeking after God. I came for all people, Arabs and Jews, Christians and Muslims, every tribe and nation. The divisions that men have created between my children grieve my heart. You were never my enemy, Abdullah. You you were always my beloved son, whom I longed to embrace. I began weeping uncontrollably, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally meeting the God I had been searching for without knowing it. For the first time in my life, I felt unconditional love. Not love based on my performance, my wealth, my status, or my religious observance, but love simply because I existed and was His creation. Jesus knelt down beside me and pulled me into an embrace that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering in exile. My son, he whispered in my ear, every sincere prayer you ever offered reached my heart. Every time you sought righteousness, every time you helped the poor, every time you tried to honor God according to your understanding, I was pleased with your heart's intention. Now let me show you who I really am. Have you ever felt that your relationship with God was missing something essential, like a puzzle with a crucial piece still hidden? I discovered that Jesus was the missing piece that made everything else make perfect sense. Jesus extended his scarred hand toward me, and suddenly the entire tunnel transformed into a vast panoramic theater where my entire life began playing out before us like a three-dimensional movie. Every moment from my birth until my death was visible simultaneously, but I could focus on any specific scene with perfect clarity. What struck me immediately was that I could see not only my actions, but also their effects on other people, the motivations behind my choices, and most importantly, how God had been trying to reach me throughout my entire existence. The first scenes that Jesus showed me were moments of shame that I had long forgotten or justified in my mind. I watched myself as a 25-year-old prince walking past a group of Pakistani construction workers outside the mosque after Friday prayers. They had been working on our palace renovation for months without receiving their wages because my father's accountant had delayed payment to improve our quarterly profit margins. One elderly worker approached me with tears in his eyes, explaining in broken Arabic that his daughter was sick and he needed money to buy her medicine. I saw myself dismissing him with a wave of my hand, telling him to speak to the proper authorities, knowing full well that those authorities would ignore him for weeks. As I watched this scene unfold, Jesus showed me what happened next. The man's daughter died 3 days later from a fever that could have been cured with $10 worth of antibiotics. I watched the funeral, saw the father's devastating grief, and realized that my indifference had contributed to a child's death. You had $50,000 in your wallet that day, Jesus said gently, without condemnation in his voice. Your heart wanted to help him, but pride and social conditioning blocked your compassion. This is what sin does, Abdullah. It separates you from love. Scene after scene continued, each one more convicting than the last. I witnessed business deals where I had exploited desperate sellers, knowing they had no other options. I saw myself turning away a Syrian refugee family who had come to our gate seeking help, afraid that helping them might damage my reputation with government officials. I watched myself ignore my wife's emotional needs for months while I pursued another profitable investment opportunity, treating my marriage like a business contract rather than a sacred covenant. But what broke my heart most was seeing the moments when God had tried to reach me through dreams, through conversations with servants, through news reports about suffering people, and through the gentle conviction of my own conscience. I saw countless opportunities where I could have shown Christ like love, but chose self preservation instead. Every time I chose wealth over compassion, status over service, or pride over humility, I was rejecting Jesus himself without realizing it. Jesus then began showing me a different perspective on religion and faith that revolutionized my understanding completely. Abdullah, he said, look at how man made traditions obscured my love instead of revealing it. See how religion became a wall between people instead of a bridge to me. I watched scenes of myself judging Christians as infidels while never actually investigating what they believed. I saw myself dismissing the gospel as corrupted text without ever reading it. I witnessed my pride in being part of the true religion while my heart remained far from God's character of love and mercy. Most painfully, I saw how my religious observance had become a performance to earn God's favor rather than a response to His already existing love. Your 5 daily prayers were beautiful to me, Jesus continued, but I wanted your heart, not just your ritual compliance. Your fasting during Ramadan pleased me when it came from genuine devotion, but I grieved when it became merely a cultural obligation. Your pilgrimage to Mecca was meaningful because you sought to honor God, but you were seeking in a distant place the one who had always been dwelling within your heart. Then Jesus showed me the most transformative vision of all. I saw God's love for every person on earth, regardless of their religion, nationality, or social status. I witnessed Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, and people of every faith tradition whose sincere seeking had reached God's heart. I saw that denominational divisions were human constructions that grieved God's Spirit because they separated His children from one another. At that moment, everything I thought I knew about salvation crumbled and was rebuilt on the foundation of God's grace. I fell to my knees before Jesus again, this time not in confusion, but in complete surrender. Lord, I cried, I surrender my life completely to you. Forgive me for my pride, my selfishness, my ignorance, and my hardness of heart. Jesus placed his scarred hand on my head, and immediately I felt every sin, every failure, every moment of separation from God being washed away, like dirt being rinsed from my soul. I felt cleaner than I had ever felt after any ritual washing, purer than I had ever felt after any religious observance. Look inside your own heart right now and ask yourself honestly, is there something between you and God that needs to be surrendered before you can experience His complete love and forgiveness? After my sins were washed away, Jesus took my hand and led me to a place that can only be described as paradise beyond human imagination. We emerged from the tunnel into a realm where colors existed that have no names in earthly languages, where music filled the air without any visible instruments, and where perfect peace permeated every atom of existence. The landscape stretched endlessly in all directions, with crystal rivers flowing through meadows of flowers that seemed to glow with their own inner light. What moved me most profoundly was seeing other Middle Eastern believers who had died for their faith throughout history. There was Polycarp of Smyrna, an ancient Syrian bishop who had been martyred by the Romans. I met modern day converts from Iran, Iraq, and Afghanistan who had been killed for leaving Islam to follow Christ. These men and women welcomed me with such joy, speaking in Arabic and celebrating my arrival as if I were a long lost family member returning home. One elderly man approached me with tears streaming down his face. His name was Ahmad, and he had been a former imam from Baghdad who converted to Christianity in 1987. He had been executed by extremists in 1994, leaving behind a wife and 5 children. Brother Abdallah, he said, embracing me warmly, I have been praying for the Saudi royal family for 30 years, asking God to reveal Himself to one of you. You are the answer to countless prayers. I spent what felt like hours worshipping alongside these believers from every century and every nation. Arab Christians sang hymns in ancient Aramaic, the language Jesus himself had spoken. Jewish believers who had recognized Jesus as their Messiah joined hands with Gentile converts in perfect unity. I saw former Muslims, former atheists, former Buddhists, all united in their love for Christ, with no trace of the divisions that had separated them on earth. The sense of belonging I felt in that place was unlike anything I had ever experienced. For my entire earthly life, I had felt like an outsider, even within my own culture. Despite my wealth and status, I had always sensed that something was missing, that I didn't quite fit anywhere completely. But in heaven, surrounded by these believers from every background imaginable, I finally felt like I had found my true family. Jesus appeared beside me as I was marveling at this incredible fellowship. Abdullah, he said gently, this is your eternal home. You belong here with me and with these your brothers and sisters. You could stay here now and experience perfect peace forever. The offer was overwhelmingly tempting. After a lifetime of spiritual searching and 42 years of feeling disconnected from God, the prospect of remaining in this place of perfect love seemed like the ultimate blessing. But then Jesus continued speaking, and his next words changed everything. However, your family still needs you, and my people in Saudi Arabia desperately need someone to carry my love back to them. There are thousands of Saudis whose hearts I have prepared to receive the gospel, but they need someone from their own culture, someone who understands their background and their struggles, to show them the way to me. The weight of this choice hit me like a physical blow. Jesus was asking me to leave paradise and return to a world where my conversion would mean persecution, rejection, and possibly death. I would lose my family, my fortune, my status, and quite possibly my life. The contrast between staying in this place of perfect peace and returning to inevitable suffering seemed overwhelming. Lord, I said, trembling with fear, I want to obey you, but I'm terrified. You know what will happen to me when I return. My family will disown me. The religious authorities will call for my execution. I'll lose everything I've ever known or loved. Jesus placed both of his scarred hands on my shoulders and looked directly into my eyes. My son, I will never leave you or forsake you. When you face persecution, I will be with you. When you feel alone, I will comfort you. When you are threatened, I will protect you. And every person who comes to know me through your testimony will be a crown of joy for you in eternity. He continued, Durul, I'm not asking you to go back alone. I will give you my Holy Spirit to live within you, providing boldness when you feel afraid, wisdom when you don't know what to say, and supernatural love for those who persecute you. You will plant seeds in hearts that I have been preparing for years, looking at Jesus, then at the incredible paradise around me, then back at his compassionate face. I made the most difficult decision of my existence. Yes, Lord, I whispered, my voice breaking with emotion. I'll go back. I'll carry your love to Saudi Arabia, no matter what it costs me. The moment I spoke those words, Jesus embraced me one final time, and I felt spiritual gifts flowing into my soul, supernatural boldness, divine wisdom, and the overwhelming love for the lost souls of my homeland. Remember, he said, as the paradise began to fade around us, you're not losing your earthly life, you're gaining your true life for the first time. Would you have made the same choice, knowing that obedience to God might cost you everything you hold dear on this earth? The journey back to my body felt like being pulled through a cosmic vacuum, and when my spirit violently reunited with my flesh after 72 hours, the pain was indescribable. It felt like being struck by lightning from the inside, while every nerve ending in my body screamed back to life simultaneously. I gasped for air in the hospital morgue, my eyes flying open to see a young attendant preparing my body for burial. The poor man fainted immediately when he saw me sit up on the metal table, my body temperature having been freezing cold for 3 full days. Within minutes, the morgue was filled with medical staff who couldn't explain what they were witnessing. Dr. Mansouri, who had pronounced me dead, checked my vital signs repeatedly with shaking hands. My heart rate was strong and steady. My blood pressure was normal and my breathing was clear. Most shocking of all, the 3 bullet wounds that had killed me were completely healed, leaving only faint scars as evidence of what had happened. However, there were new marks on my body that hadn't been there before. The unmistakable imprints of Jesus' hands on my shoulders, glowing slightly and warm to the touch. My family's reaction to my resurrection was a mixture of overwhelming joy and complete bewilderment. My mother collapsed to her knees, praising Allah for what she believed was a miracle of Islamic faith. My father, typically stoic, wept openly as he embraced me. But my wife Amira noticed immediately that something fundamental had changed about me. Your eyes, she whispered, staring into my face with confusion. They look completely different. It's like you're the same person, but someone entirely new at the same time. She was absolutely right. The spiritual transformation I had undergone was so profound that it radiated from my entire being. I spoke differently, moved differently, and carried myself with a peace and confidence that I had never possessed before. My perspective on wealth, status, and earthly priorities had been completely revolutionized. The things that had once seemed monumentally important now felt trivial, while spiritual matters that I had previously given little thought to now consumed my heart and mind. For 3 weeks, I kept quiet about my encounter with Jesus, trying to process what had happened and praying for wisdom about how to share this life changing revelation. But the Holy Spirit that Jesus had promised was indeed living within me, and his presence became impossible to contain. On October 15th, 2018, I made the decision that would cost me everything I had ever known. I called a press conference at the Riyadh International Hotel, inviting representatives from every major news outlet in Saudi Arabia and the broader Middle East. Standing before a room of journalists, government officials, and religious leaders, I took a deep breath and spoke the words that would change my life forever. My name is Prince Abdullah Al Rashid, and I have met the living God. His name is Jesus Christ, and I am now a follower of him. The reaction was instantaneous and devastating. Several people in the audience gasped audibly, others began shouting accusations of blasphemy, and within hours the story was headline news across the Islamic world. My father immediately issued a public statement disowning me and stripping me of all royal titles and inheritance. In a single day, I lost access to over $2 billion in assets, multiple properties, and my entire social network. The religious authorities' response was swift and merciless. The Grand Mufti issued a fatwa declaring me an apostate and calling for my repentance or death. Death threats began arriving at my home within hours, forcing me to hire private security while planning my escape from the country. Former friends and business associates refused to take my phone calls, and extended family members publicly denounced me to protect their own reputations. But the most heartbreaking consequence was the impact on my immediate family. My wife faced enormous pressure from her family to divorce me immediately. Our three children, ages 8, 12, and 15, were initially turned against me by relatives who convinced them that their father had lost his mind or been possessed by evil spirits. The pain of watching my own children fear and reject me was far worse than losing my fortune or facing death threats. However, not everyone in my family abandoned me completely. My mother, despite maintaining public silence to protect herself, would visit me secretly and listen with genuine curiosity as I shared my testimony. My youngest brother, Ahmad, though afraid to support me openly, admitted privately that he had always felt something missing in his relationship with Allah and wanted to learn more about Jesus. Within 6 months of my conversion, I had established an underground Christian ministry that operated throughout Saudi Arabia and the broader Gulf region. We met in secret locations, from desert caves to private homes, sharing the gospel with Muslims who had been prepared by God to hear the truth. The Holy Spirit was indeed confirming His word with signs and wonders. I witnessed miraculous healings during prayer, prophetic dreams and visions increasing among seekers, and the dramatic conversion of a prominent imam who had initially planned to debate and discredit me. Our network grew to include over 300 Saudi believers within 2 years, each one risking their lives to follow Christ in a culture where apostasy from Islam can mean death. We smuggled Bibles and Christian literature from Jordan and Lebanon, baptized new converts in hidden locations, and established house churches that met under the cover of legitimate business gatherings. The persecution never stopped, but neither did God's protection and provision. After multiple attempts on my life, I was forced to flee Saudi Arabia permanently and now live in Jordan under an assumed identity. I've lost contact with my children. My wife divorced me under family pressure, and I can never return to my homeland. Yet I can honestly say that I have never been happier or more fulfilled in my entire life. I traded a temporary kingdom for an eternal one, and I would make the same choice again without hesitation. The peace and purpose and joy that comes from knowing Jesus personally far exceeds any earthly pleasure or position I ever enjoyed as a Saudi prince. My current ministry reaches thousands of Muslims across the Middle East through internet platforms and secret networks. Every week, I receive messages from seekers who want to know more about Jesus, and many have come to faith through our online testimonies and Bible studies. So, I'm asking you, just as someone who has seen both sides would, what is keeping you from investigating Jesus for yourself? Don't let religious traditions, family pressure, or fear of consequences blind you to God's love. Jesus isn't the enemy of sincere faith. He's the fulfillment of every seeker's heart who truly wants to know God intimately. Don't wait until death to discover the truth about Jesus Christ. Seek Him now while you still have time, because eternity is far too long to be wrong about who God really is.